I truly believe that we teach what we need 1,000%. And,
That
when we have the opportunity to say these things out loud, that not only are we helping others, but we're helping ourselves. That's so beautiful because that ripple effect just keeps flowing and flowing.
yeah,
And the
the
more that we
butterfly
get,
effect, how they call it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, right? And the
Yeah.
more that we say these things out loud, the more that we can actually take them in and fully like embody them. And so yeah, it's so important that we teach what we need.
Hello and welcome back. This is Andrea Parc,
And Alexa Dumitru.
and this is Alive Again, a podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shape our journeys. Because being alive, it doesn't mean only to exist, but it's about the decisions and the meaning and purpose that we bring to our daily lives. Today, we have with us a special lady, a friend, I can call you, Shannon Donohoe.
Oh, Donohoe.
Donohoe, I'm sorry, Simpson. She is a TEDx speaker and the creator and host of Toolbox Tuesday, a popular weekly live show now in its third year. She's the founder of Whole Health Family Wellness, where she helps individuals reconnect with their true selves to rediscover their inner strength and create harmony in their lives, body, mind, and soul. Thank you, Shannon, for being here with us. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today with both of you.
It is great that we are coaches, and it's super interesting. We were talking about a little bit before we started recording that we are in the midst of personal growth for ourselves. So when people come to us and believe that we're healed totally, it's not the truth. We're the ones that do the great work with us along our clients because we're both the teacher and the student.
1,000%. I have said that over and over again on my Toolbox Tuesdays that I do and the connections that I make. I truly believe that we teach what we need 1,000%. And,
That
when we have the opportunity to say these things out loud, that not only are we helping others, but we're helping ourselves. And that's so beautiful because that ripple effect just keeps flowing and flowing.
yeah,
And the
the
more that we
butterfly
get,
effect, how they call it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, right? And the
yeah.
more that we say these things out loud, the more that we can actually take them in and fully like embody them. And so yeah, it's so important that we teach what we need.
You are a TEDx speaker and somebody that prepares for a TEDx talk. Hopefully, it will be this year. I would like to ask you, what is your speech about?
Oh my goodness. My journey through this incredible life that we are living. I have had the opportunity to move through a lot of things, like many of us in this lifetime. And I think one of the big things that I took away, or a pivotal moment that I speak about in my TEDx talk, is when I realized that my my children were actually the mirror to the work that I need to do. I don't know about you, Andrea, but I came into this world and motherhood thinking that I was going to teach my children all that I know. And then there I was in this counseling office, which I had connected and reached out to this counselor because I thought that I would needed to help my son with his anxiety. And in that moment, in that counseling session, I had this real epiphany moment where I was like, oh my goodness, this counseling session actually isn't for my son, it's for me. And it was that moment that I realized that our kids are actually here to teach us if we're willing to listen, if we're willing to be like that humble and like realize that they are coming into this planet at a newer time with us with more information that we ever had. I mean, my son, and I don't know about you, but Alexa, I know you're, well, you said you're not so great with technology, but I mean, my son was just like so good with technology from the get-go. It was like he came out of the womb and had a, like, he just knew what to do. And it was just like, it blew
A
me my
PhD in
mind.
technology.
Yeah, it's just like, what the heck, you know? But there's something so amazing, and I think is one of the biggest pieces of my journey is I really do believe that we are the mirror to each other. Like our relationships are our mirror. And there is a reason why the people come into your lives. And some of the things that we don't like, maybe in that other person, are often for us to look at. And like that takes me to the word trigger. You know, like how often are you triggered by somebody and you're like, oh, and then there you are pointing the finger going, they, them, they make me so mad, or they're whatever, right? And it's like, oh, but wait a minute. There's 3 fingers pointing back at me. So what if every time we're triggered, we could actually pause and ask ourselves, what is here for me to learn? Like, what is this person showing me about myself that's for me actually to look at? And it's just quite, I mean, this wasn't me before, trust me. The old me was the like pointing fingers left, right, and center. Everybody else's fault. I'm never to blame. And it's like, it's quite like a thing when you realize, wow,
Yeah.
every relationship I'm in is a mirror.
I hear that from her all the time.
No, I mean it is because you know it's I have this analogy. If you have a mirror and you see a pimple in the mirror, you cannot just wipe the pimple from the mirror, right? You need to fix it in yourself, and everything that is the world that we see, it's actually how we are inside. And yeah, you mentioned that, and it's interesting that I don't know if you know of Lise Bourbeau. She's also Canadian, and she wrote and she studied for I don't know 25 years the wounds that we go through, and she mentions that her son is the best teacher for her because he is the one who pushes all of her buttons. And she actually has a series in one of her books about her relationship with her son.
Yeah. Yeah. I will never forget the day. So I've had the opportunity to go through a few things in my life, and I was in the middle of chemotherapy at the time. I was 34 years old. My twins were 1 year old while I was going through chemo. And I remember we had this woman that used to come to the house and follow my twins on a monthly basis because they were only 4 pounds when they were born. So they're quite premature. And I remember her coming to me and telling me that Nolan was autistic, and she was almost scared to tell me because we were already going through so much as a family with me being in the middle of chemo and going through a double mastectomy and all the things. And I remember I had a phone call with my life coach that day because I had hired a life coach that I spoke to weekly because I thought if I'm going to get through cancer, well, I have 2 young babies with a husband that had 2 broken hands at the time. I am going to need a life coach. And so I remember having this phone call with her this day after I'd found out that my son was diagnosed with autism or very likely autistic. We didn't have the diagnosis at that point, but very likely autistic. And I remember phoning her and she was all ready to get started on our thing. And she's like, "I'm gonna go." And I was like, no, we're changing direction today. This is the news. And she just stopped and she said, "Shannon, Nolan is going to be your greatest teacher." And to this day, like, oh, I can feel emotion around that. Yeah, he absolutely has been my greatest teacher, like to this day. I know I'm so proud of him and I'm proud of myself because, like, he was the boy that I was told wasn't going to amount to anything. You know, he hummed and he just bashed his head on any hard surface he could because his brain hurt so much when he was little. And now, because of the love that we poured into that amazing young man, he's graduated 2 years early. He's got money in the bank, a lot of it. He's investing already at the age of 16. And when he was 14, he got on a train. He paid for the ticket and he traveled across Canada by himself. Like, this is a boy that I was told was going to amount to nothing. And he has, to this day, been such a gift in moments where I thought I didn't know how I could support and love him as a mother because it was a lot on some days. Some days where I wanted to throw in the towel and say, I don't know, I don't think I have the capacity to be his mom. And those are humbling moments.
Yeah. Shell, in our interview with Shell, she said something that has stuck with me really close to my heart. She said, "New minute, new moment." And it's going back and thinking about my life, it's what got me through. Saying, okay, I can't control this moment, but the next moment is a new moment, and we just take it day by day. And I think that's something that's so important, and I feel like that's what I'm understanding from you, what you're telling me, that sort of that's how you go through things. I mean, new minute, new moment. You gotta make the best out of what it is right now and pour as much love into it as you can. And if you can't give 100% right now, it's okay to give 80% and fill up that other 20% in the next moment. Whatever you can. I feel like that's what I'm understanding from this conversation.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so truth. We just do the best that we can with the tools that we have in
Right.
that moment. And, you know, you know, being a young, I mean, I wasn't a young mother. I had my twins when I was 30, 34. And, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, but, is a bit older. But, what I'm saying, like, what I know now, I mean, I wish what I knew then, what
Right.
I know now. But we don't. We
Yeah.
don't. We don't. And we can't beat ourselves up for that because just when we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
And if I can move forward each day knowing that as I learn, I can just do better each day with each time that I learn something new. And there's no sense in beating myself up because that just takes away from the moment, right? Because, yeah, I just want to do the best that I can right now,
Yeah.
because that's all we have.
Yeah. And with the understanding, right, because we make decisions at the level of consciousness that we are at that point in time. We can do better because we don't know better. We don't know what we don't know, right? So how can we make better decisions? But yeah,
It's just been such a beautiful journey. And I think the old me there was a lot of resistance to growth and learning. And now, like every day, every opportunity, I'm like, what can I learn about myself now? And that came through my journey of letting go of alcohol. And we talked a little bit about this, before we jumped on live here, and how, often when things are hard, my the old Shannon would have drove right to the liquor store because I didn't want to feel it. And if I didn't have to feel it, then it wasn't real. But now that I'm moved away from alcohol, and I'm not 100%, I still enjoy going out for a nice glass of wine here and there if I'm going out for dinner. But it's different. Like, it's not like I feel this uncomfortable unknown in my body and I just want to drive straight to the liquor store because I want it to go away. And I'm not gonna lie, there's still moments where I have those moments where I was like, oh, and I'm like, no, I don't wanna numb that. I wanna feel it, because the only way through is to actually feel.
yeah,
It gets worse before it gets better.
Yeah, because we just wanna avoid the feelings, avoid the sadness, avoid the shame, avoid the uncomfortableness of it all. But what if we could actually just sit and be in the uncomfortableness of it all? Because then it just transforms. It just
Yeah.
transmutes. But if we numb it down, then it just builds and builds and builds because we've actually not let it move through.
Right.
Right? And so it's so interesting. Like, I think about even like back to when my kids were younger and the big emotions that there were, like ginormous emotions. And there's an old, like the way I was raised, you were to be seen and not heard. You were a good little girl. You didn't get mad. You didn't speak out of turn, and suppress, 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 suppress. Well, what did that do? That didn't serve me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when my kids were really young, I didn't understand it all because I didn't have that education. My education was like, oh, this is like a lot of big emotions. Like, I can't tolerate all this. And my former partner, he would just get in the car and drive away. He didn't have any capacity to deal with these big emotions. He would just leave. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I guess that's me. I guess I'm left here to try to figure this out. And through working with a counselor for years, using attachment therapy, I was trained to help my son and my daughter move through those big emotions by expressing them in a really safe way. And I remember, this is what I'm feeling. It doesn't feel good. And I just remember being in the moment going, this is crazy. Like, I don't get this. This doesn't make sense. But now, fast forward, they have these rooms in Vancouver in different places where you can actually go and smash things and break things and beat the heck out of things. Like, what are they called? Like anger
The
rooms
break
or something?
room, something
Break
like that.
rooms, something like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is amazing. And I just think, my gosh, like how far we've come. that we actually are invited to express our emotions in a safe way instead of suppressing them and numbing them. It's just been such an incredible journey. And again, I wouldn't learned any of this if it wasn't for my kids showing me.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's a funny story now that you mentioned. Last year, Alexa went through some anxiety and other health issues.
My
And
anxiety was leading to my physical body and giving me health problems.
Oh, I know all about that.
and we were doing some restructuring here and
In my diet,
in
in our diet.
right, but we were along those lines. We restructured our closet, so we needed a rod. So we went to Home Depot to get that piece of wood. So we hang the hangers, right? And we couldn't find anybody to help us to cut the piece of wood.
And you know, they have like those stations where you go and you like, they have the saw there and you can like go and cut it.
So both of us went there and actually cut, and most of it Alexa did. And we were coming home with the piece of wood,
All happy.
and she said, "You know what? I feel so much better. This cutting thing is actually therapy."
So good, right?
Yeah, and like the teeth were all bent. So the teeth on the saw were all bent, so like it didn't work. So we had to work double time to sit there and cut and it was so
And the frustration and all of that. And it was the release of the energy.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And now we always joke when she tells me she doesn't feel better. Home Depot is right here. Why don't you go and cut some wood?
Oh, so good. I mean, it's such the truth. You know, you think of like when people used to homestead, like the men used to chop the wood and the women used to like do all the heavy washing, and think of all the frustration and anger that they moved just by doing those physical tasks.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
my thing now is so I live on Vancouver Island, and one of the most amazing gifts that they have here is they have this thing called Dance Temple. And every single, let's see, Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings, there's rotating DJs and they move through the elements. So it starts like nice and soft as you move through. I believe it starts at like earth and then moves into water and then into fire and then moves it way through again. So it's like this build up, and then you're literally like just giving her and dancing so hard at the top for like a good like 20, 25 minutes. And then they come out and they end on grace. And it's so beautiful. But the facilitator, my one facilitator, she's also a yoga teacher and everything, but she talks about shaking out the nails.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
shaking our hands, shaking your feet. And she says, imagine all the people that all the shitty things that they said to you or the hurtful things that happened to you, shake it out. And it's just an incredibly, well, one, very visual as you're imagining all these things that have happened to you or unfolded over the week or the month, and you're just moving it through your body. And it's so powerful. Then it takes me right back to you, like, you know, cutting this piece of wood or somebody chopping wood or being in that like room where you can like break things. It's just
Right.
or me hand over hand with my son when he was 2 years old, bashing the heck out of the bed. Like,
yeah.
we need to move. We need to
Energy.
move this
Yeah.
energy. It's so important. And because if we don't, it just builds up. And then that doesn't serve us. And then it ends up making you physically sick, like you said, Alexa. Like, I truly believe, like, my breast cancer was 1,000% connected to my childhood trauma. I went through a lot of abuse in my childhood. And I never spoke a word of it. I was so embarrassed and so ashamed that a family member had abused me many, many times over secretly. And I didn't believe that anybody would believe me. And so I suppressed it. And then fast forward at the early age of 34, I found myself diagnosed with cancer. Nobody in my family had been diagnosed cancer, for heck, not that early in life.
Yeah.
And I'm certain it's because I suppressed that. I didn't speak of it.
Right.
And I didn't feel safe to speak about it. And man, what a journey that was, moving through this, what I thought was a physical sickness, to then go on this retreat and find myself in a circle with 9 other young adults with cancer, some quite ill with cancer, to then realize there we all were talking about a lot of trauma that we'd all experienced in our childhood. And it just dawned on me in that moment. I was like, wow, I don't think this is just physical. I think there's more to this.
Yeah. Can I ask you, did you have any symptoms that you noticed that were off, something that you didn't resonate with that was happening in your body before your diagnosis?
No, nothing at all. Because I had literally, when I went through my pregnancy with the twins, I went into labor quite early, and then I found myself on bed rest for over 2 months. And then having the twins, they were both breech, so I had a C-section. And there was just a lot of healing going on in my body in that time after I had the twins. And there was just a lot of moving parts also happening in my house, with my husband working full-time as a firefighter and then also having another full-time job on the side. And we needed to do a whole big bathroom renovation because there was black mold and our kids were having a reaction to it. They were having nosebleeds at like newborn, like just home with nosebleeds. And so I think I was so distracted with all of the other things going on that I didn't, there was no like real signs. What the sign that I did have was I found a lump in my breast. And I didn't think anything of it because I was breastfeeding. I had been breastfeeding. So I just thought it was just like something connected to, just connected to me breastfeeding and the twins. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just go check it out anyways. Because my girlfriend, my best friend, is named Shannon as well, and she is a nurse, and she's like, yeah, you should just go get it checked out anyways. And I don't think I would have actually if she hadn't have encouraged me. But yeah, that's how I found out, was through this lump that I had. Went to get a mammogram, and then after that went to get it x-rayed.
The reason that I ask is because I last year I had some major like weird symptoms. I was horribly anxious. Like I couldn't leave the house anxious. I would walk to the train and I would just have a breakdown at the train because I couldn't get on. I was having like the weirdest. There was, I think in 3 months, I visited almost 10 different doctors and I was perfectly healthy. And everything from my arm to my head to, I was just having a whole host of weird symptoms. And I ended up saying, screw it, because all of the medical Western medicine doctors told me that I'm fine. So I decided to go to a holistic, what was it called? But what is the, when you lift your arm and they push on your arm?
Yes.
Muscle
testing.
testing.
Yes.
Muscle testing. And turns out I had an overgrowth of candida in my gut. And I went on this whole big diet. I changed absolutely everything, turned upside down and inside out. And I just changed everything. And after a few months, I started noticing I don't have any more anxiety. I don't have more problems with my wrist, because from the cutting with my big heavy metal scissors, I was getting carpal tunnel. I had no more carpal tunnel. I was back to normal. No more panic attacks. No more heart palpitations. I ended up in the ER a few times. Like, crazy, weird symptoms 20-year-old should be having.
Right? So this is really interesting that you speak to this, and this is why I dived into holistic nutrition. I
Yeah.
mean, I think personally, I think all of the chronic diseases are connected to
Yes,
gut health and digestion.
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, you think back to all the years, many years ago, people just grew their own food and,
Yeah.
you know, came from the land. And now a lot of the food that we eat is sprayed with all sorts of different chemicals to make it grow faster.
Yeah.
And people have lost connection to their food. And not only have they lost connection to their food, but they lost connection to their bodies,
Yeah.
you know? And this was one of the big deep dives that I learned through when I was diagnosed with cancer. I had the opportunity to go on different retreats. I had the opportunity to go to I went to see a naturopathic doctor. So I started learning about my body and how it worked. And it was really interesting to me. And I was like, how do I not know this about myself? Like, how do I not know how my body works? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Why are we not taught this in school? Like, this is important. Like,
Yeah.
this is like, we should be taught that we are our own doctors.
Right.
And I got quite involved in a salad bar program that I ran here in the Comox Valley on Vancouver Island. And because I'm so passionate about health, because I think we give our power away. And don't get me wrong, doctors play their part.
Right.
You know, like if I'm in a
It's a
car
balance.
accident tomorrow, I want to know that I'm going to get the help that I need. But
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
if we could be given the knowledge and the power that we are our own doctors?
Right.
And that if we choose to exercise and eat healthy and maybe meditate or give ourselves some downtime or do some journaling or talk to our friends when we're stressed out, all these things that we could do to help manage our stress. But this piece about nutrition and gut health, it's huge.
Yeah.
Like, so my daughter, so I have twins, like I said. So my
Mhm.
son's Nolan, my daughter is Abigail. And this is the reason why I got involved in this. Like, when I learned about my cancer and how it was connected to my gut health and inflammation was caused in the gut and
Mhm.
cancer is caused by inflammation, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to eat healthy. I need to
Yeah.
heal my body. So then I learned that autism is also connected to inflammation in the brain and all these things. And I was
Well,
like, well, I need to learn more about this. So that's when I went
right.
back to school to study nutrition at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition in Vancouver, because I was like, I need to know this,
Yeah.
not just for myself, because I want to live till I'm like 100. And I want my son to be healthy too. And it's really interesting because listening to you now, I'm thinking about my daughter who has so much anxiety and she eats a lot of unhealthy food, like a
Right.
lot of sugar. And what is sugar? Sugar causes inflammation,
Sugar is the major
No.
thing that I cut to zero.
right?
Zero. And that immediately, for the first week, I was absolutely miserable. But afterwards, I started feeling
Right?
so much better. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear it from mom. So she's
Absorb it.
on, so she's on her own journey right now, figuring that out. But
Yeah.
I'm certain one day when she can kind of make the link between sugar and unhealthy processed food to her
Right.
anxiety, she's going to see a massive shift in how she feels and how
Right.
even she's connected to herself. Because
Right.
that was the thing for me. Like, I think initially I let it go too far because I became obsessed about what went in my mouth. Like obsessed. Everything needed to be organic and clean. And it actually was really hard on my family, but it was my control piece. It was like, I want to live. And
Right.
this is my control piece. So, but it got to the point where I was causing myself so much stress about what was going in my mouth. I was actually doing the opposite to my body, because we all know stress
Yeah. That's
makes us sick. So it's finding that balance, right?
yeah.
It's finding the balance. And not that I want to tell people to go ahead and eat crappy food every day, but I do think that there is this 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
you know?
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
for me, it's probably more like 95-5. But
Yes.
if I'm going out and somebody is cooking me an amazing meal, I'm not saying nothing about it. I'm going to be so grateful that I didn't have to cook that meal, and I'm going to enjoy every bit of it. Or if it's chocolate, yeah, hello. I'm going to enjoy that chocolate. I'm not going to stress myself out about it. And, I think that's the thing. Like, when we can just be in the moment and enjoy, but also be mindful about, is this going to actually make me feel good? Like, it's my same thing with alcohol right now. Like, I enjoy a glass of wine, but wine doesn't really actually like my body anymore. It doesn't do good for me. I'm this new thing called menopause. It's like super interesting. And this was actually even a journey that I'm just recently learning about in like literally the last few months. I went to a movie called M Factor. I don't know if you've heard of it yet,
No.
but it's very interesting. I actually just found out that I have been in medically induced menopause for 17 years.
Wow.
Because when you go through chemo, it shuts off. And I haven't had my moon cycle for years. And I'm 51 or actually 52 this year. But so I went into menopause very early, but my oncologist never told me a thing about this.
Yeah.
And I wish I had known earlier, because I am certain that my quickness to anger and my reaction to certain situations in my marriage could have been supported, but I didn't know I was in medically induced menopause. And now that I'm on estrogen and progesterone to help me with my symptoms, like I used to have heart palpitations that felt like they were coming out of my mouth. Like, I don't know what you experienced, Alexa, when you were going to that train, but like it felt like it was going to just stop me.
Yeah, I felt like I
It
was
did.
dying. Yeah.
Like, well, this is what I thought. Oh my God, my
Yeah.
cancer is coming back. Like, so not well. And then there was the hot sweats, and then there was the mood swings, and then to find out that I've been in medically induced menopause for so many years. But again, this is this journey that we're on of constantly learning. And do I think it played actually a part in the end of my marriage? Honestly, the answer to that is probably yes, which is really sucks to say out loud. And did I know better then? I didn't. I didn't. I was just coping. And had I known, I would have done something different, but I didn't. So we don't know until we know. Yeah.
And back to the food thing. Sorry, just quick side note. I spent last year. I spent 3 months in Romania in Europe, and at the time I was still on this diet when I left from here. But when we go back to Romania, I cannot not indulge. It's just not a possibility for me. I have to eat those things. I just have to.
The food is so
The
good
food
there.
is so good, flavorful, and I just couldn't not indulge. And I probably overindulged, sure, but I didn't feel not a symptom. Nothing. The second I came back, immediately, I started having the same types of symptoms, the same recurring issues. My anxiety was back.
It's linked to the food, and the food here is different.
I don't think it's necessarily the food itself as much as it is the process.
Okay.
I think it's the process because I was looking, for example, at flour. Here, I can't eat gluten. It just doesn't agree with me.
Me neither.
Over there, so here, if I eat gluten from Europe, for example, so theoretically, it's the same gluten that I eat in Romania. But over here, I have a reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is. It's the way it's processed, and they
Yeah.
use a lot of glyphosate
Yeah.
in the wheat, and it's a chemical, and glyphosate destroys your gut lining. It's
Yes.
not good for you at all. And so over there, they're using a lot of the old practices, and they don't use the chemicals, and they don't use the sprays. And so it's changed. It's all these chemicals that are put on our food that our bodies just don't like. And let's be honest, like our liver can only process so much chemicals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, I've chosen to I will indulge in gluten once in a while, but I'm really grateful. Like where I live in the Comox Valley, we are surrounded by local farmers. Like people grow all their own food, it's organic. So I have access to some really incredible food, which I'm really grateful for. But when I'm going out to a restaurant, the food isn't going to be.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we do not have the luxury here as much as we would like. We try to find. We have a what's it called, a zero waste store nearby, and they source a lot of their foods from farmers in the tri-state area, and a lot of them are very organic. And they are organic, and sometimes they bring eggs. They just install the fridge, so sometimes they bring eggs and milk. So we try to get from there as much as possible, but sometimes, I mean, we're in New York City. It's really, really hard to avoid. We use it
Right.
called Yuka. It's called Yuka.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that.
Yeah, and you scan the barcode, and we scan everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. And we do our best. And then if you need to, then you just take some supplements, some probiotics and maybe some enzymes and different things to help support your digestion. So we just do the best that we can, really.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we're approaching the end, actually, we went over. It was a great conversation. It's a question that I ask every guest. And because the podcast is called Alive Again, the question is, what is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
Mm. Right away is cold dipping.
Ah,
Yeah, I love to cold dip in the ocean. It is the most invigorating thing. One, it's incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah.
And so it reminds me I can do really hard things. And there's something so incredible about being in the ocean. I go by myself, and I have this beautiful ritual of when I go in, I talk about what I'm letting go of. And when I come out of the ocean, I talk about what I'm calling in. And it's just so incredible. And when you come out, your whole body is like tingling.
Yeah.
And you're literally, your body and your brain is like so fired up. I feel so incredibly alive. So yeah, ocean dipping for sure is one of my absolute favorites. Thank you for the question.
yeah. I've heard so much about that and cold water in general. I haven't built the courage yet to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went on a summer camp a few years ago when I was young. I was like 14. I went to ski camp in Oregon, and it was summertime. So after we would ski in the morning, we would go down to this river that we had nearby where we were staying. And it was a salmon river. So in the fall, all the salmon come down. And it was really hot outside. So our instructors were like, hey, do you want to go for a swim? And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And it was melted glacier water. So it was so cold. But it was so hot outside and the water was so cold. And that feeling of the cold plunge just stayed with me forever. And it would just made me feel so good. And I miss it so much. Even from then, from that long ago, it just like sticks with me. Stuck with me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you guys need to come for a trip to Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
You could come stay and we'll do some
Over
cold
Gola.
dipping.
Yeah. Yeah.
We would
Oh,
love it.
amazing.
All right.
It's been so lovely connecting with both of you. Seriously. Thank
same.
you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me today.
Thank you. And thank you, our listeners. And for more episodes and to hear more stories, please subscribe and follow us. Thank you so much. See you next week.